Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this year's Progress Workshop at ICASSP 2023. It's been really a pleasure to put this workshop together. And today we're going to start with our first keynote speaker, Dr. Vasileia Filidou. Dr. Filidou is the head of proposal management at Athena Research and Innovation Center in Greece. She holds a PhD from University of Oxford in quantum physics, quantum computing, and she holds a bachelor's degree in physics and a master in non-nuclear optics. She has carried out research at the above scientific fields at the University of Oxford, University of College London, and University of Patras, and also taught various undergraduate courses. In 2013, she completed a master's program in European Studies and Policy Making at the University Catholique in Louvain, Belgium, and has been working on proposal management ever since. She has submitted proposals on behalf of University College London, Thomson Reuters London, and Crowdelix. And she's a member of the Gender Equality Committee at Athena RC and worked as a female welfare officer at St. Peter's College at the University of Oxford. The title of her presentation today is Diversity and Inclusion in Engineering. We are very much looking forward to listen to her presentation. And without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Filidou. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It's great being here. I would like to thank the organizers for the invitation to talk about such an interesting and sensitive matter for every one of us. So this slide is my bio that was very nicely already been introduced by Theodora. So there isn't anything much to say on that. So this is now an overview of my presentation. I'm going to start with some basic definitions on the terms that we use in this field. The importance of diversity in engineering, the biases that we observe, biases especially in signal processing fields, the European perspective, but also gender and how it is approached in European proposals, but also some takeaway messages. So diversifying STEM is a social justice issue, and it is fair that we give proper presentation to every kind of person in this society. Science and technology are major drivers of economy. It is very important to know that the money that we invest in science and technology, it gets multiplied and reinjected back to the economy. For example, for every dollar spent, NASA spends, the Americans get $8 right back. Also, STEM fields are innovation accelerators. They foster job creation and profitability and progress with regards to performance. We all have a responsibility to alleviate disparities and contribute to the acceleration of social equality. The issue of minorities and women not reaching the stage of not pursuing academic careers is really important, because it's not only a social issue, but also affects the performance, the economic performance of the countries. Minorities' participation in STEM, and particular women, is very important, because women have a very different way of solving problems. They contribute with the provision of better quality of services, and they also have quality of services, but also the products that females generate are very have a greater impact on the wider population, because they're customized to it. So in order to build equitable societies, we really need to invest in having an inclusive workforce. Now I'm going to start with some definitions on the terms that we use mostly in this field, in very simple terms. Gender is basically the inner experience of somebody on how they experience themselves. It has to do with how they feel, if they feel like a man, if they feel like a woman, if they feel like a trans, queer, or a non-binary person, or any other identity. gender should not be confused with sex. Sex, it's something that has to do with the biology, the anatomy, and the chromosomes of the person. So they're totally different things. Minorities, minority groups are groups with the least number of participants, that they usually experience a relative disadvantage when compared to the dominant social group in a certain setting of society. Biases are actually the stories that we make up about people before we learn who they are. Biases are really sneaky, especially the unconscious ones. And for example, an example would be a colleague of yours might say, oh, you're not suited to be the director of the faculty because you're too young, for example, despite having all the qualifications to become one. I don't know if you are aware of the Harvard Implicit Association test. It is a test about discovering your own unconscious biases. It's really important. It's been taken by more than 5 million people. You're more than welcome to take the test yourself to discover any of those unconscious biases that you might be making without even knowing. Some very quick statistics on the results of the people who have taken the test is that 80% of people who took the test prefer young people over older people. 75% of people prefer white people than Black people. And interestingly, more than 45% of Black people who took the test actually prefer white people over people of color. With regards to diversity and inclusion, it is an interesting explanation is given by Verna Myers, who is basically the leading person at Netflix on inclusion and diversity. She says characteristically is that diversity is being invited to the party, whereas inclusion is being asked to dance at it. Equality and equity are, again, two different terms that are used interchangeably by mistake. Equality is giving everyone the same resources despite their needs and their differences, while equity means giving people exactly what they need in order to succeed. So this diagram is taken by data by Women in Science database at the DG of Research and Innovation at the European Commission. And what it actually shows, it shows a decreasing proportion of women as they move up the educational and professional level of a typical academic career. This diagram is split in 3 parts. In the first one, the BSc, we have a BSc and MSc researchers and graduates, then PhD researchers and graduates, and then we move on to the professional research levels of grade C, B, and A. What we see is that for bachelor and master courses, the women versus men, the numbers of women versus men attending the courses are quite comparable, whereas we start observing a slight decrease on a PhD level and then a more dramatic decrease for women when they reach the other professional research levels. So we see that in this pipeline, we lose more women than men. The same happens outside of this world, outside the academic world. In the labor market, we saw low retention rates of women in STEM-related occupations. Women with degrees in STEM are less likely to remain in their fields of study. So, for example, let's start for the first one, the health professions. Those for women who took a health professions degree, out of 10, 7 of them continue to work in health-related occupations, whereas for degrees in computer science, engineering, and math, this is much, the women are fewer. So for 10 women who have studied mathematics, only 2 continue working in fields, in mathematics fields, doing research or any other kind of occupation. The opposite happens if you see the right-hand side, the right column in management, in other occupations for management and business and finance and social services, where we see actually the opposite picture, that the women who start working, who have studied those fields, continue their professional careers onto these fields. We also observe low retention rates of minorities in STEM-related education occupations. This is a research that was carried out in the US for Blacks and Hispanic people. We see that they're underrepresented across most STEM job clusters. And the main reason, as quoted by this research paper, was basically that had to do with their access to fewer resources. This is is observed mostly in the three first fields: engineering, health-related sciences, and physical sciences. Now, from the three previous slides, what we saw was actually a leaky pipeline. We see that the minorities are pulling themselves outside the STEM race quite early due to two main reasons. There are other reasons as well, but the literature gives these two as the most prominent ones. The first one is socialization, and the second one is institutional biases. So why women and minorities drop out the STEM race? Let's start with some research that was carried out, a social psychology research that was carried out a few years ago, that was trying to understand whether the emotional traits of women, the psychological state, or their biology, how this affects their presence in the labor market. Surprisingly, it was shown that only 10 to 15% of these differences really affect their choices and their performance. So there are other reasons, rather than being a woman, so she doesn't want to do an engineering degree. There are other reasons that persist and create this gap between men and women, especially in STEM sciences. On the right-hand side, we see a distortion, an image, a distortive image, and this is basically the socialization, how women perceive the engineering fields and in general the STEM fields. They have a wrong perception of fields that are more manly oriented compared to fields that can be more easily be accessed by women. So it's a wrong idea about feeling that some courses or some subjects are not relevant or suitable for them. So the real question that you should be asking is whether women can see themselves as scientists. And if they don't, is what we can do about it, how we can help women build a science identity. There are three main reasons as to why minorities, women, and even men are able to can create a science identity. It's basically depends on how good somebody thinks they are, how well they perform, and how much recognition they receive. Out of the three, the most important one, and especially for women, is the third. Women really need some mentors. They really need women, well-respected members of the scientific society, to support them all along the way, and help them understand that failures and issues and challenges that can face in their scientific career can be overcome. It's important to quote here that women, compared to men, tend to internalize failures. Women think that when something goes wrong, it's their fault, as compared to men who think that, okay, if something is wrong, then it's somebody else's fault, it's the environment, it's something is happening that it's outside them. So we need to cultivate more of this culture. Technical socialization is another term to determine, to explain basically how it is whether it's more probable for a girl to go to a scientific field and pursue an academic career. So it has to do with a child's exposure to technology. So beyond how women feel about themselves and whether they believe they can be good scientists or not, they have around them a number of agents. For example, their parents, their siblings, friends and teammates, who with the way they perceive science, the way they talk about it, can really affect them in the future and in the way they think about themselves and whether they could be good fit for this field. So it's really important for when girls grow up to grow in environments where doing scientific things or learning things to do by hand or working with the dad to fix things or do some DIY and woodwork or any kind of repairs, really help them cultivate this notion of doing things that they're more practical. And actually, a research has shown that the women that were exposed in these environments and that were encouraged by their partners, especially their dads and people at school, were more probable to go to science to do and to carry out a STEM degree and work in the STEM field later on. So beyond the socialization biases that I mentioned before, we have institutional biases. These are biases that they are outside of us, of ourselves. And it's important for young people to understand and know what to expect, what to expect when they go outside in the world, in the real labor market. So the first institutional bias has to do with pay gaps. So basically, a pay gap is that when a woman and a man does the same task and the woman gets paid much less. So for example, in Europe, the pay gap is around 13%. So if a man does a task and gets awarded 100 euros, the woman will get 87. So this is quite unfair. On the positive side, STEM workers tend to earn more than similarly educated non-STEM workers, which is very encouraging. And we see that in STEM, racial earning gaps are much narrower the last 5 years. This is a diagram that was taken by a report by McKinsey that shows the representation by a corporate role by gender race in 2001, and shows that in leading roles, women are much fewer compared to men. We see that white men get promoted and they go up to the C-suite level to become CEOs, CFOs, whereas for white women up at the top, there is a clear reduction of around 10. This is even worse for women of color, where we see that from 17 we drop down to 4, which is more than 75% of reduction. So women are promoted to managers at far lower rates than men, so that this is really creates a barrier for companies to lay a foundation for sustainable progress at more senior levels. So they have to find ways in order to feed these senior levels with more women. This comes at a cost. Another research has shown that for compared companies that have taken diversity measures, there have minorities, more minority people, minority and women in the workplace. We see that those who have adopted those measures could see an increase in productivity and performance and profitability by 11%, whereas the others see a reduction in performance by 10% from 2014 to 2019. So the impact back in the day was much lower compared to the impact that it is nowadays. So all the companies and the labor market really needs to consider and include women and minorities in their workforce, because this actually costs. It costs very much. So with regards to the importance of diversity in STEM, I said a few things in the beginning about how differently women act and how they can contribute differently in STEM settings. But I like this quote about from Chalina Ortez Montanes by the University of Kentucky, who is actually the president of Women in Engineering. And she characteristically said that women are known for being efficient problem solvers. They don't look for the easy way out. They're very resourceful. This has to do with our where they're built. And they know where to go and get help. They're not shy. They know where to find the resources in order to help themselves. They're very good leaders in team settings, and they do not give up as easily. They're persistent. So all these biases that I talked about before, as well as some other cognitive biases, really have an impact on people. They cause isolation issues, decreased confidence, microaggression, attrition, and decreased productivity. Characteristically, there was a study that was run in the US and in Europe, and it was actually a US-born Black girl in engineering and doing an undergraduate degree in engineering, who said that she felt that she faced microaggressions during her time during the course, but they were more like racial microaggressions and not so much gender ones. And this really caused her a fear of belonging. She didn't feel that she could fit in this course. She couldn't feel that culturally she was good for it. So this really impacts people. And somebody else quoted that, okay, I'm a people's person. And it's really, I find it very difficult to be in a field that prioritizes impersonal relationships. And this is actually what the STEM fields are to some extent. You have people that they work on their own on a specific topic. They might be doing experiments. And it's not that easy to cultivate this, this feeling of, to embrace people that easily. There are also biases that appear in signal processing. For example, when training AI datasets for computer-assisted diagnosis, it was seen that these models underperform in underrepresented genders. Speech recognition is less accurate when it comes to dealing with female voices. Also, facial recognition doesn't perform that well in non-white people. There is also hair bias in EEG methodology, where Black individuals are underrepresented and are not included in scientific research about EEG because their hair is very thick and the impedance really changes the signal. So these are excluded for this research, from this research, so we don't have sufficient data to cover this part of the population. Also, there is emotional gender recognition biases where gender cannot be predicted by models that use the emotional state of the person to detect anger, sadness, happiness, or being in the neutral state. So the UN 17 Sustainable Development Goals are goals that are set by the United Nations for peace and prosperity. Number 5 is gender equality. So all the UN members really, they're urged to adopt measures in order to promote gender equality. Europe has done the same. I'm going to talk specifically about adopting gender balance in European proposals and in European funding. The first one, which is imperative, otherwise it excludes the organizations from participating and requesting money from the European Commission, is the generation and the development of a gender plan. The gender dimension in research proposals is much more important nowadays than it was before. Before, when we were writing research proposals, what we were doing basically is that we were quoting how many women we had in panels, how many researchers who are women are going to participate in this research. But nowadays it goes in a deeper level, where we discuss research proposals with regards to the methodology, the data sets, whether there is sufficient representation in the data sets studied, if we have end users to test our work that are women, and I'll say a few things a bit later on that. There is also dedicated funding for gender equality, especially in the digital work program and in the widening work program. Gender equality in innovation projects. So women, the European Commission really wants to boost female entrepreneurship. They really want to see women creating startups. They really want to see women taking their idea to the market. And there is funding nowadays for that. There's also gender equality in evaluation panels of proposals. And I need to say here that for proposals that are marked equally, the proposal that will get funded is the proposal that has more women researchers has included more women researchers. Now, with regards to the gender plans, as Theodora said earlier, I'm part of the Gender Equality Committee of Athena RC. We've drafted together the gender plan for our organization. It's very strict in the way that it needs to be developed and the axis around which they're going to be built. We have the work-life balance axis, where we really want to see how we can help our people, the employees of the research center, achieve this work-life balance. We have gender balance in leadership and decision-making, gender inequality and recruitment and career progression, about how we can have the right mentors for our people and have fair conditions when it comes to assessing people who have applied for jobs in our organization. Gender dimension, how it is incorporated in research and teaching, and also how we take measures against violence and sexual harassment. So these are a few aspects to consider in research proposal, whether we have a gender research specialist on the team, if there are any barriers that women being recruited, and how they can carry out their roles. So some takeaway messages. But before I go there, I want to say two things that might be of interest from my experience in the previous years. So when I was a welfare officer at the St. Peter's College at the University of Oxford, it was one day, it was around 3 a.m. at night, actually, and an Indian girl came up to me. She knocked on my door. She was crying, and she said, "Oh, I'm really scared because my dad and my brother are outside the building. I could see them across the street, and they want me to pack my bags and go back to India with them because they don't want me to study." So this girl was actually an excellent, she was doing a master course in robotics. She was very competent. She had a scholarship from Oxford, and that wasn't something that she wanted to do. So Oxford, back in the day, back in 2008, had already all these policies and all these measures to protect people and to protect and secure the workforce and the students. So what we did is that we called the junior dean and we went to the police station, and actually she really wanted a restraining order for her parents because she was really scared that might one day they really might do something really dangerous and make her go back to India. And the second thing is that when I finished my undergraduate degree, I knew that I really wanted to pursue a career to do a PhD in quantum computing. That wasn't, quantum computing wasn't that popular at the time. So quantum computing wasn't that popular at the time. So I really had to prepare my next steps. And it was interesting that in Greece, that wasn't, I couldn't find anybody doing that on an experimental level, at least. So I spoke to my supervisor and I said, okay, I need to do that. I probably need to apply to go abroad, but I would like to do a master's in the meantime. So he said, okay, you should take lasers and photonics. And I'm like, why should I do that? That's totally irrelevant. And he said, no, that's not irrelevant. There are some studies that have already tried to link the two fields. I was like, okay, he convinced me, and I did a 2-year master's in nonlinear optics. And then when I moved to Oxford, my supervisors there, I had 4, my supervisors there were really excited, and they actually said, oh, it's the first time we see somebody that has these 2 unique skills to be able to understand quantum computing and have a background on lasers. So they designed a program around my qualifications. And so I ended up doing, creating nuclear entanglement on photoexcited triplet states. And that was my PhD. So for the second bullet point there, I want to say to the young people in this room, actually to embrace things as they come. Do not try to force things. The whole mastery is to try and connect all your qualifications to try and entangle them as better as you can, to knit them together. Take the road less traveled. Do not try to find easy recipes. Try and go and study items and topics that haven't been studied much. This is really important because it's like for you, you're exploring new territories and you feel like you're the first person doing that, and really gives you a boost, a confidence as well. And you end up being very well respected, trying something very difficult. Bring your own personality to your work. You shouldn't let yourself be absorbed in the environment that you are. You have to be assertive and to bring your own personality to the workplace so that others can follow and do the same as well. Be open to change. Do not stick to one subject. Do not do a single thing. Just feel free to change, to see different things, to cultivate yourself, to understand who you are. And as I said, the connectivity is where the dots connect. This is where magic happens. And also create your own opportunities. Don't wait for a job advertisement to come up so that you can apply. Just find out what you like, who you are, find the person who does that, who works in this field that you have an interest on. Go knock on their door and tell them that I want to work with you, I want to do that. And from then on, great things will happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Filidou, for this great presentation. We're wondering if there are any questions. We have a few minutes for questions.
Thank you so much. That was an amazing talk. Can you please go again over the institutionalized bias?
Yes.
Because, you know, there were things which were done quickly or I didn't follow.
Sure. Oh, this is Europe. Do you want me to repeat anything in particular? Sorry.
Yes, so the pay gap is 13% in Europe in 2021. which I think is better than the US. And then you talked about the diminished responsibility. Is that when you talked about how many are promoted to leadership skills? Or
Yes,
was it?
exactly. The leading
Yes.
positions. Mhm.
So I cannot read, maybe my eyes are not very good, but I cannot read the numbers. So on the, you are saying that the white women are on the top, they tend to, oh, this
No,
is the
just, yeah,
percentage,
it's the percentage, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
To see the difference, how it decreases from the entry level to the senior level and C-suite level. So white women, they start like out of 100, they enter 30 and they reach the C-suite level only 20. So 10
Okay.
drop out or remain in lower position, leading positions.
So white women end up to be in less percentage in leadership position, while white men like double.
Exactly, exactly. And then you see for white men, the number even increases, it gets double.
Mm.
Whereas for women, it drops around, I don't know, 30% by 30%.
And this is also in Europe,
This is McKinsey. No, it's in the States.
in the States. Is there just percentages, like right now in the high-tech area, what percentage are in leadership positions are women or not?
I'm not aware of it. I mean, I can check this presentation to see if there are any other diagrams. But I don't know if, sorry.
I suppose it's implied like 62% of the leadership are men. And
Yeah, so when it comes to leading positions, so if we see this pipeline is for grade C, B, and A, do you mean leading positions in research when it comes to being a director of the faculty or a president of a research center or being in the executive board of a research organization? Is this what you mean by leadership in academia? Or you're talking about researchers that are?
First, let's go back to the last.
Sure.
And jump this year. If we look at the one on the far right,
Mhm.
we see that 62% of the leaders of the high tech are men and only 20% are women. That's
Yes,
that
exactly.
maybe is the
Exactly.
answer.
Yeah, 1 in 3.
One in, yeah, all right. And then you went to the other one.
The pipeline.
Yeah, and the pipeline was. What is the x-axis? It's
The x-axis, it's the career progression.
the career progression.
Students, PhD, bachelor, master's, PhD, and then researchers C, B, and A.
So when they cross is after master degree? When the two cross each other.
You mean the vertical lines?
So this is the leaky pipeline. Or the PhDs are in the middle of them.
You can come closer if you cannot see the.
Yeah,
the
maybe you
number.
can explain it a bit more.
Yeah. So what I was saying here is
So
that
the far left is in the bachelor, the top one is men, the bottom one is women. Or
yeah. I mean the graph, the whole graph. The green graph is men, and the black one is women. Okay. So this is split in 3 parts, and in the first part, I don't know if the laser works. Does it work?
It's
It's
students.
okay. So on the left-hand side, you have 54% of females attending BSc and MSc courses, and 59 graduates.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is a slight increase because they come for MSc from other fields. When it goes to PhD, some people drop out. They don't continue from master degree to go and pursue a PhD degree. So it goes it decreases even further when it comes to actually pursuing a research career, being a grade C researcher or grade B or a grade A. This is even worse. That determines the quality of your research, the years that you are in the field, and your output in general. So
This is not in high tech. This is in all graduates, right? This is all
this
graduates.
is yeah, this is for STEM. Mhm.
This is, we have more, and as students, we don't have more women than men.
Sorry, this is for
Okay,
all graduates. You're right. Yes, it's for all graduates. Yeah.
Okay, now I can.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Just a lot of information. All very useful.
Thank you.
I wish I could have taken notes, but anyway, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I think we have 1 more minute for 1 more question, maybe. Okay, I think I have 1 question because
Yes,
I
of
really
course.
liked your presentation. I was wondering if you said that basically women internalize failures more. And I was wondering if the literature has any good best strategies or good practices in order to avoid this.
I think obviously there is some internal work that needs to be done, and basically I'm not aware of a research that explicitly says how somebody can mitigate this, but the most prominent way to do this is basically by having a mentor. This is what the main recommendation is, to have somebody showing you that, okay, that is not your fault, it's outside you, it has to do with the circumstances, and to be able to urge you to move on and see things differently. Basically, it's a matter of perspective.
Thank you so much. Let's give it another round of applause to Dr.
Thank you.
And we will be having our next panel now, or the first panel of the day. We will be starting in a few minutes, around 9:05, until we have everybody here. So thank you so much. We'll be right back.